Hey, welcome to Slot Math for Developers Part 2. I recommend you watch Part 1 before watching this, or else it probably won't make a lot of sense. If you watched Part 1, welcome back. And now, as promised, we're actually going to make some math. What I'm using here is Slot Math Generation Tool, which I made myself. There's a link in the description if you want to download it. You can use anything. You don't have to use this. You can use a spreadsheet or roll your own tool. There's really a lot of ways to butter these parsnips. I'm just going to use this because it's convenient for making the points I want to make. So first thing we got to decide is project setup, the payout mode, credits or multipliers. Now, credits is kind of old school, honestly. It's more for lamb-based slots. It's from the days where slots would have a denomination. So you'd have like penny slots and quarter slots and dollar slots, and they would use the same software. So they would pay out in credits, and the credit would be tied to the denomination. If you made a 5 credit bet on a penny slot, that would be a 5-cent bet. If you made a 5 credit bet on a dollar slot, that would be a $5 bet. So it's not very common in iGaming, but some people still like it, so it exists. What we're going to be using is a multiplier, which is wins are expressed in terms of multipliers. So a 1.2x win, if you bet $1, you're going to win $1.20. If you bet 50 cents, you're going to win 60 cents. And that's pretty straightforward. Now, evaluation mode, we're going to choose between paylines and ways. You'll notice scatter isn't here. That's because you can use scatter with either paylines or ways. And you can have just a scatter game as well, but I'll get into that a bit later. But for now, we're going to stick with paylines, although I actually kind of prefer ways, but let's just do paylines because there's more to explain. Okay, so rows and reels. We're going to do 3 rows, 5 reels. And here's some symbols. I've gone ahead and added these. So ace, king, queen, jack 10, that's a very common low-scoring set of symbols, standard for slots. They're usually pretty undecorative, just letters. Because of the way slots work, you want to have a lot of nondescript tiles so that your theme-based valuable tiles stand out more. And ace, king, queen, jack 10 is just very commonly used, although, it can be anything you want. We have wild tiles here. Wild tiles are just like wild cards in card games. They can substitute for anything. You can specify what symbols they substitute for or not. You might want to have a specific symbol which wilds don't substitute for. That's totally possible. This needs anchor checkbox deals with the case where, say, you get 5 wilds in a row. Well, what is that value? If there's no tile to anchor them, then how will you know what the wilds are supposed to be worth? And if you click needs anchor, then 5 wilds will not pay anything. But if you don't need an anchor, then wilds will pay the highest possible prize that they could substitute for. Wilds can also be multipliers. You can see wild multi here. And so this is any payline or ways that is made that includes a wild 2x, the prize will be doubled, will be multiplied by 2. And that's going to be any value you want. You can have wild 3x, wild 4x. They have an outsize effect on the RTP, so be cautious there. And now we have our theme symbols. I've decided to go with shapes for this demo. Star, square, triangle, circle. The more sides, the more valuable. Okay. Now, we're doing paylines, so let me just select the central line only. I said in the previous video that there were 99 possible lines on a 5x3 slot, and here they all are. Let's have a look. There's a lot of them. You do not have to support all these. In fact, I would recommend that you don't, although you certainly can. But you are going to have to. People will be really mad if you don't support the center line. And, also the bottom line and the top line. People will be mad if you don't get those. But now you can spice it up with anything you want. I kind of like this one. And if we're going to do this one, we should do the inverse of that, which is here. So that's 5 lines selected. That's fine. You could do more. Up to you. Symbol rules. This is basically the pay table. Now, what needs explaining here is this 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind. What's that about? Well, you have the option of saying that if the first 3 symbols in a line are present, then that can be awarded. Or if the first 4 or all 5. So that's an option. You can just do 5 if you want, or some symbols you can only reward 5, some you can reward 3, 4. You can also do 1 or 2, but that would be kind of insane, I'll be honest. It's just here because why not? Okay, so here they all are. You can see the values. These values I did not put a lot of thought into. They're just basic starting values. we'll tweak them as we go. So what they start off at isn't the most important thing. It's worth noting that 10 is the lowest paying symbol because every possible win on a 10 is sub push. These wins are sub push, 0.6, 0.8. 1 is push. Every possible win, even 5 of a kind, is a sub push win for a 10. You can see the shapes have higher prizes, with star having the most edges has the highest, which is 5x. This is actually very low. This is very low. But, for the purposes of illustration, it's a good place to start. Now, let's look at our strips. Again, these strips are kind of nonsense. They're just randomly sorted versions of one of each symbol per strip, which is not going to be useful. So we can populate all reels weighted by highest payout. Rare pays more. And that's kind of closer to where we want to get. We want to have the lowest paying symbols, a lot of them, and the highest paying symbols be fairly rare. And this is not going to do it in any very useful way, but it's better than nothing, right? So I'm just going to put 30. Why not? Apply. Okay, and here you go. And as you can see, these symbols here are the low scoring symbols, and there's a lot more of those than there are of these higher scoring symbols, right? And that's by design. You can also see there's a lot of adjacency here, which is not great. It's not great. So I'm going to do shuffle all reels, no adjacent duplicates. Okay, so that's better. Now everything is set up. But how do we determine what the RTP of this math model is? Well, there's a couple of ways. One is exact analysis. And this is what you would expect it is. It's basically simulating every possible combination of stops from all of the reels, totaling up all the prizes and averaging it to get the RTP. This gets more and more complicated as the game grows. When we start adding retriggering free spins, it's going to become untenable. So it is possible and it works, but we actually tend not to use it. What we tend to use more often is Monte Carlo. And Monte Carlo is a very powerful concept and something you come across a lot in statistics. And what it is, it's just simply running a lot of bets. It's making 1 million bets of $1, totaling up all the prizes, averaging them, and that is your RTP. And it can be done quite quickly. Now, obviously doing 10 billion takes a lot longer than doing 100K. And as we know from the previous video, depending on the n number of your math model, 100K may not give you an accurate RTP. 10 billion will give you a very accurate RTP. But we don't need to be accurate to start, so 100K is going to be fine for us. So let's go. Let's see what the RTP we have here is. Okay, so this is very low, 40.9. Volatility is very low. Hit frequency is okay. But the RTP is way too low for us. We don't want that. So what do? Well, one thing we can do to increase the RTP, an obvious win, is to get rid of sub-push wins, because sub-push wins bring down the RTP. So how do we get rid of sub-push wins? Well, we can start pulling T's out of here, just like that. I'll grab a few and just drop them. And that will work. But you have to be very careful when you're moving, removing, or adding tiles, because everything you do has multiple unintended consequences. Removing a T reduces the likelihood of T on that strip, but it also increases the likelihood of everything else commensurately. Maybe that's what you want, and maybe what it isn't. One way we could very quickly reduce the number of T wins without disrupting the strips too much, we could concentrate on the third reel. And why would concentrating on the third reel help us? Well, if you remember, it goes 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, and 5 pay. So 1 and 2 don't pay. So if we pull out from the third strip, then we're really reducing the number of 10s that are going to be in prizes, not just for 3, but also for 4 and 5, because you can't make 4 and 5 if you can't make 3 first. Just got rid of a few 10s from reel 3. Let's see what we get now. It's still going to be way too low, but let's see. 45. But you see it did jump up. It did jump up a bit. As we would expect. Volatility also jumped up a little bit. Okay, so what else do we need to think about here? Well, I would say there's a show close symbols option. And what that does is it shows if symbols are close together. Now, this is mainly an aesthetic concern unless you're doing scatters. Because if the scatters are within the window, then you are far more likely to make your scatter total if they're close together than if they're not. But outside of scatters, it's just, I think, good practice to separate out the tiles, not have any adjacent tiles. It just doesn't look good. So I'm going to speed up the video while I go ahead and rearrange these so that there aren't any adjacent tiles. Okay, so now there are no tiles that are so close that they can both appear at the same time in the rows in the same strip. Just to note, I haven't done anything other than rearrange tiles. I haven't deleted any tiles. I haven't added any new tiles. All I've done is rearrange. And even rearranging will change the RTP somewhat. So what we got, 45.895. Let's run it again. 45.569. Not a lot, but somewhat. Because every change you make has some kind of impact. Now, what else we want to do? That's still very low. The other thing obvious thing we can do is add in some whiles. Whiles have outsized impact. So if I add in a couple of W2s, not that many, I'll just add in 2 to the third row, 1 to the fourth, 1 to the fifth, 100,000, 72. Big jump. The other thing I can do is add in some high scoring stuff, so I can add in more stars. And I'm just adding 1 extra per strip. Actually, I'll add 2 extra per strip. Why not? And you notice I'm not taking a lot of care out of this. I'm doing it fairly randomly. 100,000. 69. Actually, it went down. Why would that happen? Well, as I said, adding more of these makes other things less likely. So I'm going to add more of these specifically to the third row to increase the chances of everything else happening. And this is basically what you do. You just basically add tiles, remove tiles, rearrange tiles, change the pay table until you get close to the result you want. As I said, the strips don't have to be the same length. You can do anything you want. You can have, here's something we want to do to raise the RTP. So I'm going to add another rule, another symbol. You notice I would have to update this list now to include the new symbol. As it happens, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is create a new jackpot symbol. And this symbol is only going to pay off on 5 of a kind. It's not going to be captured by wilds, but it's going to pay 50x, right? Okay. So let me go back to strips. This won't have been added. I'll just add a couple of them around. So bear in mind that because this only pays on 5, it's going to be pretty rare. It is going to be pretty rare. One thing you can do that is kind of sneaky, because this only pays on 5, I could fill up 4 of the strips with this symbol. And as long as one of the strips had a very small count, maybe only one of them, then it would still be extremely rare, but it would have the added effect of making everything else also less likely. So that would actually really bring down the RTP, even though I'm adding a lot of valuable symbols. Let me run another 100,000. 57 went down. Volatility, I think, went up there, didn't it? Okay. Let me just add some more of these. Because again, because I have it paying off on the 5, even if there's a lot of them, it's still going to hit pretty rarely. And, this is not this is like what I'm doing here is very blunt instruments. I'm just trying to make a point. The point being twofold. One is that adding symbols doesn't always have the effect you think it has. And the other point being, there's a lot of ways to change the RTP by the way you handle symbols and strips. And the process of creating math is basically just doing it until you get where you want. The more you do it, you'll get a feel for it. This is really kind of more of an art than a craft. You kind of do it, you figure out tactics to achieve what you want, and you just do it over and over again. You get good at it. So let me run 100,000. 44. RTP went way down. hit frequency also went way down, because you can see, because I added a 5, because this is only 5, it's making everything else less likely while still being very rare itself. Now, there's something else we could do to increase the RTP. Add some more paylines. What am I going to add? What do I like? Oh, yeah, I like this one. It's pretty. And this one's pretty. I'm being arbitrary here. You know, you should have some kind of coherent philosophy about which paylines you add, or else people will call you on it. That's not really what I'm doing. By adding a bunch more paylines, I'm making payouts much more likely. So let's run another 100,000. 80. That was a huge jump. Volatility, very high. Well, it's still low, but it's going up. Okay, so we got to 80%. That's still low, but it's getting closer. Now, something else I want to demonstrate is the idea of a feature. And this is something like free spins. So a feature is basically a sub-game. I'm just going to copy from base. I'm going to call it free spins. You can lock the entire game to base if you want, but it's better to just copy from base. It doesn't have to have the same rows and reels. It can be anything you want. It's going to have all the same paylines selected. It's going to have all the same symbols. But again, it can have a completely new set of symbols, a completely new set of paylines. Anything you can communicate that works for what you're trying to do is fair game. Okay, so we have free spins here, but we don't have a way of triggering it. So what are we going to want to do? We're going to want to add a symbol called free spins. And this is going to be a scatter, right? This is going to be a scatter. Remember I said we'd come back to this? Well, scatter can be set at a symbol level, not at the game level. So you could have all your symbols be scatters if you wanted. That's totally reasonable. And let's have a look. Free spins triggers a feature game. If you don't want to do this, if you want to have your scatter wins just give prizes, then you can do this. They can work exactly the same way, right? You click how many you want to pay out for, and you give the prize. So, but we're not going to do that. We're going to trigger a feature game. The feature game we're going to trigger is free spins. And now, how many free spins are awarded for how many symbols? So 3 trigger symbols, you get 5 free spins. 4 trigger symbols, I'm going to say you get 10. And 5 trigger symbols, you're going to get 15. So that's very generous. You get a lot of free spins when these are made. Okay, so the next thing I need to do now is add these to the strips, because there's no free spins in the strips, right? Now I want to be relatively generous with this. I'll just add like 3 per reel, I guess, somewhat arbitrarily. The impact of adding a symbol to a reel is also very dependent on how long the reel is. A tile added to a 30 symbol long strip is a wildly different impact than a tile added to a 100 symbol strip, you can see. Also, to get back to what I was saying earlier about the close symbols, there aren't any here, but like if I move this up here, you can see these are close together. Now this matters a lot for scatter wins, because now these two can both appear in the same grid, making it much more likely to get a scatter win. So I don't want that. You could want it. You're allowed to want it, but I don't want it. Okay, let's run 100,000 spins. RTP 99. Okay, that's higher than we want, but we're good. We're going in the right direction. I'm going to get rid of some of these W2s because they are having an outsize impact. The other thing I want to do is I want the free spins game to retrigger. What that means is I want you to be able to earn more free spins while free spins are happening. So enable self-retrigger. And I have to set the retrigger symbol. I have to be careful here. We want it to be, oh, I haven't added it. So I'm going to copy from base again because I hadn't added the free spin symbol to the free spins game. And now I've copied from the base. And now free spins is here. And I'm going to have it have the same values as in the base game. So the player won't really even know that technically they've gone into a feature. They'll just see that they get free spins, which is totally fine. We look at the strips of the free spins game. Because I copied again from base, it already has... Oh, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. We have to add these, of course, because they're the trigger. So I'm going to add these in here. And you can have, if you want free spins to be rare, or retriggers to be very common, then you can simply have not very many free spin tiles on the base game and a lot of them in the free spins feature. Then you would get rarely a first one, but you get a lot of retriggers. I mean, it's really what kind of game you're making. You'll also notice that I'm just dragging them into the bit I can see. I mean, you'd want to be more careful and distribute them all over the place. I'm just not taking the time to do that because it's not really important. But, you can zoom out and see if the distribution is pleasing to you. Okay, let's run Monte Carlo again. 65. Now, that's because in addition to adding the free spins, I also removed a bunch of wild 2x's, which have a big impact. So the lesson here is you should really only do one thing at a time, which I didn't do. But there you go. And you can see the hit frequency and then hit plus trigger. So the hit frequency is the percentage of spins that hit, and hit plus trigger is the percentage of free spins that win, plus the percentage of spins that trigger the feature. So we can see that 2.3% of games trigger free spins. And if we want to see how this feels, we can play. Just make some bets. So you got 10 free spins here. Now we'll just play through those. You see the balance does not go down through the free spins. We retriggered. We got 5 extra free spins. And this is a good way to test your math. You kind of want to watch your balance. And what you want is a kind of a roller coaster. You want it to go down, you want it to go up. You want it to not stay where it is. You want it to go down for a little while, then go up for a little while. The RTP is way too low on this to have a good experience, but that's the idea. Volatility is still low. How would we fix that? Well, if we wanted to fix the volatility, what we would do is add some more high-value prizes. That's how you increase volatility. You get rid of the sub-push and low prizes, and you add in high-value prizes. If you do that without adjusting the hit frequency, your RTP is going to get too high. So you have to balance all of these things. This is actually working pretty well. Now, 95.5 is pretty close to what we want, right? But let's see what it is with 1 million spins. Takes a bit longer. $94 goes down a bit. And this is the range. This is the range where it's going to land. Let's run 10 million. I'll speed this up. And 94.515, right? And you can see the 95% RTP band, this is narrower because we're getting a lot more accurate. And, this is really it. This is basically it. This is what you do. You set up your symbols, you set up your rules, you set up your pay table, and then you just adjust and fiddle to try and get closer to what you want. That is all you do. Okay. So there's one more thing I want to talk about, which is randomness. And it may seem that that is a weird thing to leave till last, as it's kind of a fundamental concept, but there's a reason. Okay, so let's go talk about that.